Welcome to Bitcoin for Money. All right, today we're jumping into one of the biggest, most controversial topics out there when it comes to Bitcoin, energy. I mean, you've seen it everywhere, right? The headlines, the critics, the policymakers, they all say the same thing, that Bitcoin's massive energy consumption is its Achilles heel, a total deal breaker in the age of climate change. And you know what? They're not wrong about the sheer scale of it. The Bitcoin network uses a truly mind-boggling amount of power. We're talking about roughly 0.65% of all global electricity. That's more than a lot of entire countries use. It's a huge number, and just looking at it, it's easy to see why people think it's just, well, an indefensible waste. Okay, but hang on, because this is where the whole story flips on its head. What if that massive appetite for energy isn't a bug, but actually a feature? What if the very thing everyone criticizes, Bitcoin mining, could be the key to helping us switch to a renewable energy future and faster? I know it sounds like a total paradox, but stick with me. Let's break it down. So to really get what Bitcoin is doing here, we first have to talk about a fundamental problem that's plaguing our modern energy grids. See, as we try to move towards green energy, we're hitting a massive roadblock, an engineering challenge that old-school fossil fuels just never really had to deal with. Renewables are awesome, right? But the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. This up and down nature, this intermittency, it creates huge headaches for the people running the grid. Their number one job is to perfectly match the supply of electricity with our demand for it second by second. Too much power can literally fry the system, and too little, well, that causes blackouts. And this leads to two huge and completely opposite problems. So on one side, you have something called curtailment. This happens when it's, say, super windy in the middle of the night and those wind turbines are just cranking out clean energy, but nobody's really using it. The grid just can't take it all. So what do? They're literally forced to shut the turbines down, just wasting enormous amounts of perfectly good zero-carbon energy. It's incredibly inefficient. Then you have the flip side. What happens when the wind suddenly dies down or a big cloud covers a solar farm? The power supply plummets, but we're all still trying to run our air conditioners. To stop the lights from going out, grid operators have to fire up these things called peaker plants. These are usually old, dirty power plants that run on natural gas or diesel. They're super expensive to operate, they can take hours to get going, and they spew out a ton of carbon. They are the grid's dirty, clunky emergency backup plan. So you've got this grid that's struggling with too much clean energy one minute and not enough the next. This is where Bitcoin mining steps in, but not as some dumb brute force energy consumer. Think of it more like a highly specialized industrial tool with a very unique set of, well, superpowers. Bitcoin mining is unlike almost any other industry. First off, it's location agnostic. You can put a mining operation anywhere on Earth with an internet connection, even right next to a wind farm in the middle of nowhere. Second, it's highly interruptible. We're talking about the ability to power down in seconds, not hours. Third, miners are hypersensitive to the price of power. Their main cost is electricity, so they're on a constant global hunt for the absolute cheapest energy they can find, which, guess what, is often that stranded, wasted renewable power we just talked about. And finally, it's totally scalable, from a tiny setup to a massive warehouse. So you take these unique abilities and suddenly you have the perfect partner to solve the grid's big dilemma. Bitcoin mining can be the buyer for energy nobody else wants, and at the same time, it can provide stability when the grid needs it most. Let me show you how that works. It creates this amazing virtuous cycle. So picture a new wind farm. During off-peak hours, it's making way more power than the grid can handle. Instead of just shutting down and wasting it, the farm sells that excess power to a Bitcoin mining operation built right next door. The miners are thrilled to buy this super cheap, otherwise wasted energy. Now here's the magic part. The wind farm is now making money on 100% of its energy, not just some of it. This new guaranteed revenue makes the whole project way less risky for investors, which directly encourages and funds the construction of even more renewable projects. Okay, now let's look at the other problem, when the grid is stressed out. The old solution was to fire up those dirty peaker plants. The new solution is something called demand response, and Bitcoin miners are perfect for it. This means when demand spikes, instead of adding more dirty power to the grid operator can just pay big energy users like miners to turn off for a bit. The miners are happy to do it. They get paid without even running their machines. And look at the difference, a response time of seconds, not hours. Zero emissions, and it turns what was a huge expense for the grid into a source of stability. It's a total game changer. Look, this all sounds really good on paper, right? But does it actually work in the real world? Is this economically viable? Let's get into the numbers. Because really, this is the most important question. For any of this to happen, it has to be more profitable for green energy companies to partner with miners than to just go it alone. And the answer, it seems, is a massive yes. Check this out. A fascinating study from 2024 ran the numbers for a huge solar plant in the UAE. Scenario 1, the plant sells all its power to the grid. In that case, it would take 8.1 years to pay off the initial investment. Okay. But in scenario 2, the plant used its power to mine Bitcoin instead. The payback period? It dropped to just 3.5 years. It literally cut the time to get their money back by more than half. That makes these green projects way, way more attractive to build in the first place. And it's not just about the money. The environmental benefit was huge too. That same study found that this single solar-powered mining operation could stop around 50,000 tons of CO2 from hitting the atmosphere every single year. To put that in perspective, that's like taking more than 10,000 gas-powered cars off the road. But the good news doesn't even stop there. This brings us to another game changer: methane mitigation. You know when you see those flames at oil and gas sites? That's called flaring. They're just burning off waste natural gas, which is mostly methane, a really potent greenhouse gas. It's incredibly polluting. Well, miners can now drop a shipping container full of mining rigs right on site, capture that waste gas, and use it to make electricity for mining. They turn a harmful emission into a valuable asset. And get this, the amount of gas that's flared globally right now is actually more than enough to power the entire Bitcoin network. It's just staggering. So when you start putting all these different pieces of the puzzle together, that old, simple narrative that Bitcoin is just a wasteful energy monster, it really starts to fall apart. It's a much more interesting and, honestly, a much more hopeful story. So the big takeaways are pretty powerful. Bitcoin mining creates a market. It's a buyer of last resort for energy that would otherwise be completely wasted. It gives our grid an incredibly fast, clean way to balance itself out. It makes building new solar and wind farms more profitable, speeding up their deployment. And it can literally turn harmful methane emissions into a productive resource. And this really gets to the heart of it. The debate shouldn't just be about if Bitcoin uses energy, but what we get for that energy. For millions of people, a decentralized, censorship-resistant global money is an incredibly valuable invention. The fact that the very thing that makes it secure, its energy use, can also help solve one of the biggest problems in our green energy transition, well, that's just an amazing positive side effect that gets ignored way too often. It's a powerful thought to leave you with. We started out thinking of Bitcoin as a climate problem. But when you look closer at how our energy grids actually work, it starts to look like it could be a crucial part of the solution. What if the key to unlocking a greener energy future wasn't what we thought at all? What if it was a new kind of money? Feel free to subscribe for more educational Bitcoin content, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so in the description. Thanks for watching.